Hello, this is Brandy Horton, Vice President of Communications at Rails to Trails Conservancy. Each year, RTC selects one person as the country's rail trail champion, someone who has gone above and beyond in the name of trails. Our Doppelt family rail trail champions are those who have made significant contributions to the rail trail movement through their work, volunteerism, or support. I am honored to be with the 2025 Rail Trail Champion, Ehas, CEO of Groundwork Jacksonville. Kay, we are proud to recognize you and the innovative, pragmatic approach you've taken to ensuring that the 30-mile Emerald Trail gets built and fulfills its potential to serve as a catalyst for creating more social, economic, and environmental resilience across the region. Let's start our conversation today with just a little bit of background. Can you share a bit about the vision of the Emerald Trail?
So the vision of the Emerald Trail is about more than being a trail. So we talk about community building work because we see the trail as a catalyst to really neighborhood revitalization. So neighborhoods that have been neglected for decades, promises were made that weren't kept. The trail is probably the first major infrastructure investment since highways cut through neighborhoods. So we see it as a major connector, both offering mobility options to folks that don't have a car, but also social connections, connecting these neighborhoods to each other. They have a lot more in common than not. Also to really greening up the urban area as we go through it, adding lots of trees and native plants. The city gets healthier by using the trail. That economic development happens because of the trail, and we know that will come because it has in other areas. And it's happening already, even before we built the first mile. Commercial developers were acquiring abandoned commercial buildings to rehab them and reuse them, which was really exciting. So we just see it as this incredible way to make our urban core neighborhoods and our downtown really attractive for both visitors, people want to move back to the urban core, and for tourism.
That's incredible. And I love hearing, this is a tool for kind of addressing broken promises. This is a way to bring a really positive infrastructure development to the community when there really hasn't been that infrastructure investment for decades. And when there was, it was not something that brought, positive benefits. How do you go about engaging the community in that conversation? I think that probably can be challenging given, the history that exists there.
So we started when we pulled together a steering committee to actually develop the trail master plan. We had residents from the neighborhoods on that steering committee, so that from the get-go, they were involved in the planning process, as well as city folks and other agencies and businesses. But the Lavilla Link, which is the first mile that we built, actually came about because of residents on the steering committee. That when we shared the first draft of the plan, they're like, wait a minute, I want to be able to get more directly downtown. And so now we always talk about, we can't imagine that not having that Lavilla segment because it is a major, major historic neighborhood in the city of Jacksonville, referred to as the Harlem of the South. So we're also restoring 2 creeks as part of the system. That'll be 6 miles of trail. And so we form creek task forces where residents and businesses and other nonprofits and city folks are at the table helping to make decisions. And we do that for trail design as well. We just finished the PD&E, which is the planning, development, and environmental study for the last 4 segments. And we had a ton of community engagement, whether it was walking the route to get input, it was meetings, it was focus groups, it was pop-ups. I mean, we just did a lot of engagement so that we could finalize the trail routes and made changes from the master plan based on the input.
Well, that's incredible. It's by the community, it's with the community, it's
Absolutely.
for the community, but it's also really taking that community input. And, to me, that's a big piece of what really stands out about this project and your leadership. But I also think that the relationship between the community engagement and the public-private partnership that exists here and that real kind of partnership with the city of Jacksonville, sometimes those 2 things can feel at odds with each other, to hear that the steering committee had agency folks and neighborhood folks and really everyone all together. I think that is so critical to your success, but really essential to successful trail networks development. Why do you think that's important in Jacksonville to kind of bring all those groups together? And why do you think it's working?
Well, we can't get the project done without public money. I mean, the bottom line is it's a very expensive undertaking and you need public dollars to get it done. I think that we've been very fortunate. We're now on our third mayor since the organization came into being, and a Democrat, a Republican, a Democrat. And so we have been able to get each one of them on board. That's by communicating with them. That's by doing what you're saying you're going to do. So when we did the Trail Master Plan, we got an agreement with the city that we would each pay for half of trail design and they would pay for construction. And because we thought from the very beginning that it needed to be a community project, not a city project. Because the community is what tells elected officials and others, this is a priority for us. And that helps get them on board for that. And so that has always been how we've gone about it. And I think that both the community and public officials know that we are honest brokers, we're transparent, and that we are reliable and we're going to do what we say we're going to do. So it's worked. And we have really good relationships. I mean, relationships are key.
They are key. And that's a perfect segue to my next question. I was going to ask you, how do you cultivate those relationships? I think when we look at the Rail Trail Champion Award and our Hall of Fame trails, we really want to be able to lift up models that have been successful so that people in other places can say, oh, wow, this is how they're doing it there. I can learn something from that and I can apply that in my community or in my region. So I'm curious, these partnerships they're foundational. You don't get anywhere without those relationships and those partners. How have you cultivated them? How have you brought those local champions along to really build the support you need and the progress that's happening with the Trail Network?
Well, one thing is I was fortunate that I had city relationships already, both by working in a constitutional office with the city, but then also working with the city as a nonprofit board chair. Yeah. So I knew how to work with the city to get things done. And I also, my philosophy over the years, I came to the conclusion that if you want to get anything done, you need to do it yourself. So don't depend on others, right? Including the city. It's like, what do we want for our community? What do we want? And then you go to the city and say, hey, here's what we'd like to do. Let's work together on getting that done. And it's been a really good approach. And I think it's also the fact that we are sharing in the cost. I mean, we've brought $22 million to the project as a private nonprofit, which is 10% of what the city has kicked in so far, but it's still a significant amount of money. So I think we also, when there was a city council champion when we were putting together the master plan. And so we actually had the city council adopt the trail master plan. And we met with them in advance. We had workshops with them to go over it. And every single one of those council members were on board with the Emerald Trail Master Plan. It was really a beautiful sight to behold, as was the mayoral administration. We are working with disenfranchised communities, and it takes time to build trust, but we have a really good community engagement staff. And we are there. We're like always there. We attend their meetings. Our goal is to help neighborhood organizations build capacity to kind of be the leaders of their neighborhood in terms of what they want to see happen there. And that's our approach.
Well, and we started this by saying, this trail is a catalyst for that resilience, that social resilience, that economic resilience, that environmental resilience, and that idea of investing in the community, in your neighbors to build capacity. That is the power of what a trail can do. I think when we think bigger, when we set bigger goals, it's more than a piece of infrastructure. It's really about catalyzing deep change, deep trust in a neighborhood. And so I love everything you shared there just about.
Can I add one other thing?
Please do. Yeah.
So Jacksonville has been known as a city of renderings. And I don't think Jacksonville's alone in that. I think that happens a lot of places, right? Plans just sit on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, I knew that one of the first things we had to do was actually convince the community that this was going to happen. And so the Trail Master Plan had a 10-year implementation plan. And so that's why it was really important for us to say, no, look, the city's kicking in money for design. We're starting our first design project. And that's how we were able to raise private dollars. And so our donors are fabulous. We love our donors very much. And they're just such supporters of the project.
Well, and there's something to be said here about having skin in the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it can be hard for folks to wrap their head around that. Now, how do we even get there? And so it's the relationship cultivation that you're leading at all levels, right? It's the neighbors, it's the community, it's the elected officials, it's the private funders. There's just so many layers here of relationship building, but that's what it takes. That's what it takes to get the job done. And I think that's what it takes for the plan to continue to be moving forward, even in the face of hardship. And so recently, not very long ago, we were celebrating with you and our staff locally on the ground. They were celebrating with you when you landed just a massive grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation. And, we were all dismayed when that grant was clawed back. It was $147 million. That's, significant. It would have completed, if I understand correctly, would have completed the trail. But what I think is the most noteworthy, because this has happened in a few places and it's been very challenging, but what's noteworthy is that almost immediately your members of Congress stood up with you, your local officials stood up with you and said, this region is committed to the future of this project. And so while the grant clawback here was unprecedented, it's not uncommon to experience disappointment and frustration along the trail building journey. And I'm curious why you think there's just so much support to see this project through.
Because I think people understand the significance of a 30-mile trail and linear park system through the heart of the city as having tremendous value. They all get that. And I think that, my outlook was we didn't start with $147 million and we were making progress. So we just have to continue to make progress and we'll figure it out as we go. And so I think that, and again, that's what leadership's about. Like, to me, it's no. We're just going to continue to move forward.
Progress and success begets success, right? And so
yep.
Wins add up to the big wins. And
since then, we've had a groundbreaking for the next trail segment. We're about to do a groundbreaking for a 1 Mile Creek project. So, we are continuing to move forward.
The wins continue to rack up, and that is incredible. Well, I'm going to close with one more question, and it's about advice. What advice do you have for the movement, for all of the people watching this who are trying to build the relationships, they're trying to secure the funding, they're trying to create those meaningful community engagements that can help to catalyze their trail projects? What advice do you have for them?
I think it's important to have a really big tent. The more folks you have on board, the easier it's going to be to get it done. I do think if you can have it led privately with public partners, you're more likely to get it done as well. Because, nonprofits are really entrepreneurs in many ways, which I didn't realize I was one until I took this job. And I just think that, a nonprofit can be so much more. We can turn on a dime. We can make a decision quickly. We can implement strategies faster. There's just so many things. And by the fact that we brought money to the table also meant the project could keep moving. Because where a government agency might take them 6 months to do a change order, we can make that decision in a day. My advice is a really big tent. I do think that you should have private money in the game. And I think it's critical to involve community.
Kay, congratulations. We are just so thrilled to welcome you into this community of champions, and everything you have to share and learn with the movement across the country. It's invaluable.
Thank you, Brandy. And I really am honored, and I'm really excited that the organization is going to get national attention.